Hello, welcome everyone. I'm Jialin Chen. I'm chair of the International Geographical Union Transport Geography Commission, and I am based in Department of Geography and Planning at University of Liverpool in the United Kingdom. It's my great pleasure to introduce this online workshop series. The first session is dedicated to the topic entitled Transport Geography Research in and on Africa, Challenges and the Way Forward. This session will not have been possible without the dedication of Dr. Ernest Agyemang and Professor Fred Durubowski. Both are esteemed members of our steering committee. They have organized 3 insightful talks on this important and fascinating topic. As a commission, we aim to host at least 3 online workshops and seminars annually, and we encourage you to follow our activities and stay engaged with our initiatives. Thank you for joining us today from different parts of the world. Without further ado, I would like to introduce and hand the floor to our session chair, Dr. Ernest Agyemang, Senior Lecturer in the Department of Geography and Resource Development at the University of Ghana. Dr. Agyemang, over to you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Jialin Chen, for the warm introduction. And to our cherished audience, I'd like to say a very good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everyone, depending on where you are joining us from today. Today's seminar, it's on transport geography research in and on Africa, challenges and the way forward. And one may want to know, how did we arrive at this wonderful, interesting theme for today's conversation? Well, sometime back last year, it was, I think, October 2024, when Professor Frederick Dobruskes reached out to me and suggested that we brainstorm and share ideas on what we could potentially discuss concerning African transport geography. After several series of emails and brainstorm of ideas, we came up with this theme. And so as part of the conversation today, I would share with you the motivation for selecting the workshop theme. What are some of the context, the local background issues that confront Africa, which necessitates this conversation we're going to have? Also, does this workshop, the theme selected, what does it seek to achieve? We conducted some primary data, out of which we'll talk to, but then we'd like to share with you what methodology we adopted in generating that particular data. And then we'll reflect on the key, takeaways, reflect on policy recommendations going forward in order to make transport geography conduct a lot easier from the African continent. So again, what motivated the workshop's theme? So basically, we all do appreciate the fact that transport is such an important, critical aspect for the socio-economic growth and development of societies. We cannot develop without transport. It is also common knowledge that Africa is fast urbanizing. Indeed, since 2010, there are more Africans living in bigger towns than they do live in the rural settings. Urbanization isn't a problem. The main problem is how people move about to engage in economic activities when it comes to bigger centers. On the topmost right side of the screen, you see humans caught up in this confusion of a traffic scenario. This is something that you're most likely to see in most urban centers of Africa, where beginning from traffic congestion, long commute distances, road traffic crashes, air pollution, and the likes. These are challenges that transport, the consumption of transport poses for the continent. The second visual you see is this serpentine long queue, a very huge traffic congestion on the streets of Accra, which was captured only last year. This and many other problems pose a huge challenge towards the attainment of the global goals, especially goal number 11, which seeks to encourage the inclusive development such that we don't leave anyone behind. At the continental level, the Economic Community of West African States, ECOWAS for short, has one of its avowed aims and desires to ensure that there's a lot intra-continental spatial interaction among African countries. Unfortunately, a number of geographical, political, and linguistic barriers have beset this noble intention. And so it's against this backdrop that transport researchers are called on to provide evidence-based solutions for the sustainable movement of goods, people, information on the African continent. So let me also say that generally it is known that in terms of scientific output, in terms of research that emanate from the African continent, it comes nowhere near other continents of the globe. When COVID-19 came, the entire world was affected. Yet, according to Kana et al. 2020, only 3% of the scientific output that were published came from the African continent. Well, this general lack of research output come from Africa is not something that is affecting. It also affects transport geography, and so that cannot be an exception. Just as there are fewer research outputs from all strands of scientific endeavor, transport science and communication is also going through some challenges. So today's presentation or today's seminar is to create a platform for us to discuss some of the challenges as well as the prospects for promoting the conduct of transport and geography within the continent. So as you are aware, Africa is such a huge continent. Indeed, it's the second largest continent in the world, covering 1/5 of the total Earth's land surface. For the purpose of our conversation this afternoon, we've chosen to focus special attention on Ghana, which is located in the western part of Africa and home to some 32 million inhabitants. Ghana's urbanization rate is currently around 57%. The next country we'd like to discuss would be Nigeria. Nigeria is also located within Western Africa and is home to some 228 million inhabitants, out of which 55% are living in the bigger towns and cities. And finally, we'll spend some time looking at the Democratic Republic of the Congo, which is located in Central Africa, home to some 150 million inhabitants, out of which 48% have been urbanized, DRC. Now, typically for a study like this, trying to project an African storyline, it's very important that we at some time come together and then share ideas. So in the next few minutes, I'll introduce the first speaker, Dr. Adidotun Adenigbo. Joseph and I worked together to brainstorm and develop or generate a survey instrument together. And the idea was that can we talk to our own fellow professionals, transport professionals, and also transport researchers, and solicit their views as to what they consider to be some of the challenges that they have, some of the challenges that they encounter as they apply their trade, as they do research into transport. So what you see here is an interface of the Google form that were used, and we shared a link among our professional networks. So what you see here to your left, I, for instance, joined this Ghana Transport Researchers Forum. You have researchers from different walks of life in transport, and we all come together. And I put the link in the invited colleagues, and I'm happy to note there are some of our colleagues who've also taken time off their busy schedule to join this discussion. We thank you so much and welcome you. And then we serve reminders. And at the end of the survey or data collection, these are some few general views, especially that Ghana and Nigeria share in terms of the participants who took part in the survey. So I'll run you through this, and afterwards I invite Joseph to also run us through the key findings from Nigeria, and then we'll intersperse that with a conversation from our presenter from the DRC, after which I'll come back to present the Ghanaian perspective. But for the next few minutes, let me just run you through who our survey participants were. So in total, there were 58 transport professionals who took part in the study, and the majority were Nigerians. In terms of gender, in both cities or in both countries, there seem to be, it's a male-dominated field. And again, it's something we need to talk about. How is it that you have fewer females showing up or contributing to the transport research or transport debate? So there are more males than there are females in our field. Then again, in terms of the highest qualification, we're interested to see who were the people we're speaking with or taking the data from in terms of their highest academic qualification. Within the data set from Ghana, the majority had completed their PhDs. And then for Nigeria, the majority were either at the points of their PhDs where they are yet complete or they had fully completed. In terms of how they acquired the skill, it was very also important because we felt we need to know where people were training from or how they applied their skill. In Ghana, most of the participants trained in local universities and research centers in the country. But of course, we also had some taking their tuition or skill acquisition from outside of the shores of Ghana. In Nigeria, the majority were trained locally. Now, in terms of their current occupation, we wanted to know who they were. Within the Ghanaian data set, we found out that most of them were lecturers or professors who are teaching and imparting knowledge to the next generation of scholars, and then contributing to national discourse in terms of policies and recommendations. In Nigeria, the majority were researchers and also students. That is what the data suggests. Now, in terms of their speciality, so we wanted to know which aspect of transport do they really focus attention on. For the Ghanaian sample, the majority were into transport safety and security research. For the Nigerian data set, the majority were into transport planning and policy research and the likes, and the likes in terms of transport research. Now, finally, we wanted to know what motivated, our survey participants into choosing to apply their career profession in transport or the field of transport. And from Ghana, most of them said, well, that is their career pathway. And the second cohort of respondents said it was part of their thesis that they researched on. In Nigeria, again, thesis subject area, career choice also featured prominently. So the whole idea is that transport as a field has come in to assist some good crop of researchers to apply their trade to make contribution to national discourse. But is that all there is to it? What are the challenges and the prospects for the conduct of transport research in these locations? So I will hand over to Dr. Adidotun Joseph Adenigbo. He holds a PhD in transport management technology, and his specialty is on air transport management. He had his PhD from the Federal University of Technology in Akure, Nigeria, and his thesis focused on air cargo traffic in both Nigeria and Ghana. So currently, Joseph is a reader at the Department of Logistics and Transport Technology at the Federal University of Technology, Akure, Nigeria. He's also a postdoctoral fellow at the Department of Transport and Supply Chain Management at the University of Johannesburg in South Africa. So, Joseph, I welcome you to share your screen. I'll stop sharing mine, and then you share your screen so that we can hear from you what the situation is like in Nigeria. Can you share your screen? I'll stop sharing mine. So you can do as the honors of sharing your screen. Then you take us through the challenges based on the feedback that your respondents gave during the survey. And then the next 20-25 minutes will be yours. If you could share your screen, then I hand over to you. All right, Charlene, I'm not sure what your thoughts are. Perhaps if we could allow the second speaker to share with us the experiences from the DRC. I hope that Joseph can join so we can maximize on the time. So Mr. Barthélemy Bahati Mponjo is currently a PhD student and a joint supervision arrangement between the Brussels Free University of Belgium and the Catholic University of Bukavu in the DRC. Prior to the current profession as a PhD doctoral student, he had earned a postgraduate degree in transport and logistics from the Brussels Free University at the University of Namur and the University of Liege in Belgium. Since 2018, our speaker, Mr. Mponjo, has been working as a teaching assistant at the Catholic University of Bukavu in the DRC, and also at the Department of Regional Planning and of the High Institute of Rural Development of Bukavu. So today he's going to share with us aspects of his doctoral research, and he's going to highlight the relationship that exists between cross-border transport corridors within the Great Lake regions and how that cross-border interactions have impacted the local economies. So, Bath, if you can hear me, can you share your screen with us?
Hello, everyone.
Yes, hello. So we can hear you, and in the next 25 minutes, we'll be listening to you. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Ernest, for giving me the floor. As you said, I am a PhD student, and I'm completing my PhD, and my public defense will take place in 2 days, on Saturday. Now, this thematic was developed as part of my research for my PhD research. And I was under the supervision of Frederick Dobruskes, who I greet, and Professor Dieudonné Muhinduka from the Catholic University of Bukavu. First, to give you an idea, it's here where our story took place. It's Dr. Ernest said about the DR Congo, but it's in the African Great Lakes region, and I specifically focused on the DRC, the Eastern DRC, the Rwanda, and Burundi. Now, let me first give you the global context. It's the one in which we have now different transport corridor plans that are proposed by generally international donors between countries, and the aim is here to try to connect countries in order to facilitate international trade in addition to free trade agreements. The ambition to have an African connected to the international flows is sometimes considered as a necessary and even sufficient condition for economic development of countries of this continent. As you can see on this chart, this shows how the idea is and how donors or even nationals or regions try to connect the African general and the African Great Lakes region in particular. I'm sorry, I don't know if it's running outside here. I don't know if it's disturbing you. Please, it's running.
No, I think I can hear you. So go ahead, please go ahead.
All right. Now, in terms of literature, it has been showed that this view of considering international connection as economically profitable seems to be simplistic view because there has been some researchers who has shown that even negative impacts or effect can be generated from such projects. However, when you run the literature, you realize that most of those studies has focused only, especially on so-called developed countries. But Africa in general, which is a continent that is still low endowed in those infrastructures, we don't know many things about it. Many things about the economic impact of those projects. That's why we decided to conduct this research, and we focused on the recent cross-border road modernization between the Democratic Republic of the Congo, the Rwanda, and Burundi, and we proposed to answer to this question: how does the modernization of those roads produce economic effects that vary between countries, between local production value chains, and between different social groups? This was our main question. Now, how did we methodologically address this question? We explored the question following a qualitative approach, because such an approach has the merit of being able to go down the disaggregated levels desired by this thesis. This concerns restricted geographical area, specific economic value chains, and specific group. Because we are in a context where secondary data or quantitative data are not available in general and specifically at the disaggregated level. That's why quantitative approach were not appropriate for this research. Now, this qualitative research was empirically implemented through the economic ethnography, which consisted of conducting deep interviews with local actors, economic actors, to understand how they see, they perceive this relationship between those roads modernization and the local economy. And also we mobilized a comparative case study analysis. Now, concretely about comparative case study analysis, we were obliged to choose some cases that was relevant to our question. And we decided to focus on this corridor, as you can see on the map in the right of the screen. That goes from Bujumbura, the capital city of Burundi, passing through Rwanda, Bugarama here and Kamembe, and then goes to Bukavu till to Kavumu. This corridor has been upgraded in the last 10 years, and they those works gave to it helped regions which are connected to improve their accessibility. But how this accessibility impacted the local economy? Now, for local economy, we decided to choose some case studies specifically based on local production value chains. And in this case, we choose the cassava for the case of DRC and Rwanda. The cassava is a very basic food for local people, and it's very traded between Great Lakes region countries. And then we choose the coffee for all those three countries, both in DRC, Rwanda, and Burundi. And then we found the construction stones in the case of DRC, and then rice in the case of Burundi. Those was proposed as the main production value chains that was very pertinent to be analyzed in order to represent the local economy. As you can see, we choose local production value chains so that there would be a diversification between those products. And the criteria of diversifying those value chains was their differentiated nature in terms of markets. Here we have, for example, coffee, which is especially destined to the world market. It's produced for world market, but cassava is essentially traded between countries. There is a kind of competition between those countries. Here we have building stones, which of course produced all over the border, but specifically in DRC. This is to give you an idea how I chose those specific value chains. Now, how concretely I conducted the field data collection process. I had to meet key local economic actors operating all over the select value chains, going from producers, transporters, exporters, wholesalers, even state officials and local NGOs that are implicated in local development. Now, I used to recruit those actors, as it's shown here on this this figure. I recruited key participants from the main center, connected directly by the road that was targeted. And from those initial actors, I was able to go beyond all over the value chain and meet everyone who is implicated in the production value chain, from the main center to the origin village for producer village. But also I merged those interviews with our direct field observations after passing some weeks or even some months on every field. And also I used to mobilize secondary documented information. But I have to say really that this process was challenging empirically because I had to face accessibility and security issues in a region where which experiments permanent tensions. Also, I even experienced several cases of distracts. As you know, countries in this context are undergoing tensions, diplomatic tensions or political tensions, so that when I met some actors, they were not ready to give me true information. And even in some cases, I was not even able to register or to record my interviews because some were thinking that maybe I may be one of investigation bureau member. Also, I had to face language barriers in this context. By the way, I came to produce some results, and those results I'm going to present to you in 5 main empirical highlights. The first empirical highlight is that the economic effects coming from the crossroad modernizations vary across borders. It came through that the winning territories or countries are those with the internal competitiveness needed to extend the market area of their products beyond national boundaries. This result was generated from a comparative analysis between countries in production value chains subjected to cross-border competition. Specifically, this concerned cassava between DRC and Rwanda and rice for the case of Burundi. What was the situation for the DRC border side? Here I analyzed the effect of the modernization of the Bukavu-Kavumu road on local cassava value chain. I don't know if you can see the map. This road is in red color, and those the points in orange colors indicate the regions where the cassava is produced. But they are proportional. They are tried to give a proportional to the potentiality of each area in this product. Now, as you can see to the map, this is the geography of cassava trade flows that is associated with the modernization of the Bukavu road axis. It came that the modernization of the Bukavu-Kavumu road led to an easy penetration of more competitive cassava imported from Rwanda to the detriment of local production. So there is a given of negative effects that resulted from the modernization of this road. But what can explain that a kind of paradox that resulted from that project? My first result showed that this is due to the broken down of the local and national. And as it's shown, the arrow shows the road that is connected to the main productive villages or zones to the main road that was modernized. And all those roads are now in a situation that's very, very bad, as it's shown on the picture. So it was not easy for producing villages to export their production towards the main markets, which are connected by the modernized road. That was really the problem of connection between the modernized road and the productive villages was the main reason for explaining such negative effects. The second problem was that those many productive areas in Eastern DRC are facing insecurity. There is it was shown that the dynamics of armed group in Eastern DRC has a negative impact on the kind of economic effect that should be expected from a road modernization. here there are some reports about that problem, and the PDDRCS, which is a government problem, which is a government program, computed till to 260 armed groups which are operational in this area. Now, what was the situation of Rwanda around the cassava value chain? For this country, it showed that the modernization of the Kamembe Bugarama, here we are in Rwanda, this is the second part of our corridor, led to the extension of the Rwandan cassava market area in the DRC. This map shows the geography of the Rwanda cassava export flows linked to the modernization of this road. We search to understand what is the difference between the Congolese context comparing to the Rwandan context. Here, we showed that the Kamembe Bugarama, which a Rwandan road, has some specific, in terms of context of the territory that is connected. The first is related to the transport infrastructure network. It came up that in the upstream level, there is a good articulation between the Kamembe Bugarama axis with the agricultural road network. Unlike in DRC, where we show that there is really a breakdown between the productive areas and the modernized roads. And in the downstream, it came that there is a well articulated articulation between the cross-border that was modernized with the border infrastructures, specifically bridges and some buildings which are being built at the border between DRC and Congo. So the modernization of the Kamembe Bugarama road had a very good articulation between markets and productive areas. The second factors that made the difference of Rwanda was the means of transport used in Rwanda. In this country, we found that there is a promotion of intermediate means of transport that are adapted to the local transport needs in the and the income of local population. This concerns specifically the cargo bike and the cargo tricycle. Those means of transport are cheaper and they help to transport easily product from the production zones to the markets till to the export to DRC. The third factor that explained the positive effects of Kamembe Bugarama Road was that it's a political factor which consists in that the Rwandan government has put into action a kind of articulation between the global vision of territory development with transport projects. Here, it showed from the Transport Strategic Plan for Poverty Reduction and Economic Development that before implementing a specific transport project, they have to ensure that it's related or it's connected to the global plan or the master plan of territory development. And for the last factor was security stability. And as it's known now, Rwanda is one of the stable countries in terms of security. This was really made difference comparing to the situation of DRC. The third case was here in Burundi, and we concentrated to this road axis going from Bujumbura to Rua, of Chibitoke Rua, with that they share with the Rwanda. And it was specifically here for rice, and it came that this road gave positive effect to the rice production value chain because of specific factors. The first was that the government of Burundi has implemented some specific programs in order to accompany the road projects. Every time when a road project is planned, there was other parallel projects in terms of distribution of seats, input and training to rice farmers, development of irrigation canals in the Imo rice growing area, and also advanced research that are adapted to the area. This is related specifically to the fact that they have research centers that are specialized in rice research. This is the first result that we found. Now our second main result was that the same road project can have differentiated effect depending on local production value chains. Here, production chains that are less exposed to cross-border competition tend to benefit more from road modernization. This result was generated from a comparative analysis between different value chains in the same territorial context. It was a kind of intra-spatial analysis. Unlike the first was an inter-spatial analysis, but this is intra-spatial analysis. Now, here, it is a case of Bukavu-Kavumu road rehabilitation that was interesting in this result. Here we compared three value chains, production value chains, mainly the cassava that we have already analyzed in the first result. The second was raw coffee, and then the building stones.
Bath, sorry to interrupt your interesting presentation, but you have 5 minutes. If you could wrap up for us, we'll be so grateful. Thank you. 5
minutes. Yes, I think that I will be able. So now, we showed that the same road of Bukavu-Kavumu road that we showed that produced negative effect to local cassava production. It produced for coffee and constructing stones. The effect was positive. And now we seek to understand what we should explain this. And we found specifically two factors. The first was the nature of the markets. As we explained, the cassava is a product that's subject to the competitiveness between countries, but the raw coffee and for stones, there is no competition. That's why raw coffee and building stones had not to face transborder competition. And this road modernization helped those two value chains to be exported easily or to be transported easily to the market areas. The second factor was the geographical factor. That is the distance between the modernized road and the production area of every product. As you can see in the map here, we put together the three products. In orange, we have the zones where cassava is produced intensively. In green, we have the areas of productive coffee. And in green colors, we have the zones where the building stones are produced. And you see that the distance from the modernized road and the productive villages for cassava are so far. And here in DRC, in the context where the local transport system has broken down, this caused that the cassava is exposed to negative effects. But for coffee, the coffee productive villages are not far from the main road, the modernized road, as well as for building stones. That made the difference between those three productive value chains. The third result was that some social groups benefit more from those projects than other groups. And this result was generated from a comparative analysis between different social groups within the same productive sector. And here it was shown that economic gains accrue first for social groups with sufficient resources to capture opportunities created by increased accessibility. So the increased road accessibility is a factor that amplifies social inequalities. That was our conclusion. We found that capitalistic agricultural system that's going on in the region is amplifying those social inequalities, because when the road is modernized, we observed eviction of small farmers from the productive system by large-scale farmers. And this, we found that it was a consequence of gaps in law land, in land law, where we have some traditional practices in terms of land management, while there are also modern system of land management. And that's those who have many resources, they have facility to take advantage from the modern land management rules. Also, we found that there are specific policies, specifically in Rwanda, which promotes large-scale production farming. And this helped, and this pushed to the eviction of small farmers. The last, but not the least, the social distribution of effect also depends on the role of the state in the economy and the market structure of agricultural products. Specifically for the role of state, this was observed in Burundi and specifically in the sector. Here, this sector is controlled by the states, and everyone has to sell his production to specific sellers that are controlled by the states. And the state is the only one who has to fix the price. In this context, producers consider that even if you modernize the roads, they don't benefit from that because they don't control neither production quantity nor the prices. For Rwanda, it was rather the monopoly or the monopsony of the market, the coffee market. This monopsony was created by the government, and it consists in that the Rwandan government has decomposed the productive villages into zones, productive zones. And in each zone, they affect a specific a commercial intermediary. And every producer must send his production to the specific trader who was affected in his region. And they don't have the possibility to send their production to other villages. And in this situation, those producers also consider that the road cannot be socially equitable because there are it's only those intermediaries who can gain from the road modernization. That's why to conclude and give some perspective, we consider that those results highlight how complex is the relationship between modernization of cross-border road or cross-border transport corridors and local economy. They call for a paradigm shift, considering that it's necessary to create favorable preconditions to expect geographically and socially inclusive economic effect from roads modernization, rather than expecting miracle from it. And also it calls to take into account the diversity of the connected territories, the diversity of local economy, as well as of the social groups that intervene in the local economy. That is very important in studies that aim to evaluate the cross-border economic effect. Thank you for following me.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for such an insightful, very educative presentation. And also thank you for sticking to time. I understand Joseph is back online. So if you can stop sharing, then Joseph will take over. And then after he's done, I'll come in, and afterwards we all take turns to respond to questions from the audience. So in the meantime, I encourage all of you to note down your points for reflection and also for asking for further clarity and insight. Yeah, so Joseph is sharing his screen. Joseph, so you have some 20 minutes. Your time starts now. Thank you so much. And 5 minutes to time, I would interrupt to remind you. Thank you, and all the best.
Thank you, Dr. Agyemang. I'm very sorry for the interruption the other time when I was supposed to come up. The interruption came out from fluctuation of the internet supply. So, and I hope that as I make my presentation now, there will be stable internet supply. So I will continue this research, this presentation from where Dr. Agyemang stopped the other time, while he gave about a brief about how we conducted this research on transport geography research and publication challenges in Nigeria and Ghana. I am basically present the findings from our survey. However, before I will go into the findings, this is just a brief of the outline of the presentation. I will talk a brief on the brief information about Nigeria, which Dr. Agyemang emphasized the other time while he was introducing the seminar. And I will talk about our urbanization and mobility challenges, which has also been touched, but mainly, and I'm going to focus on general issues with research and publication in Nigeria, and present the result of survey responses on transport research challenges that we have in Nigeria. And this last item of outline is where I'm going to focus. Now, why Dr. Agyemang presented information about Africa, Nigeria, and and Ghana the other time, the only addition I will add to that is the fact that Nigeria is a coastal country. It's a coastal country. He made mention about the landmass of Nigeria. He also made mention about the fact that Nigeria has seaports. So Nigeria is a coastal country that has about 900-kilometer coastal line. And so the country is well located to enjoy all modes of transport. The rail transport is available in the country. I mean, road transport system, the land transport mode of system, air transport, and this natural given mode of transport, which is now the maritime transport. Unlike the other countries that are in the hinterland, where they don't have facilities, maritime transport services, because they are not coastal countries. Nigeria is a coastal country that has at least an estimate of 900-kilometer coastal line. So we'll now talk about the issue about urbanization and the mobility challenges that has been a major problem to transport services in Nigeria. And it is mainly because of the population of the country and the rate of urbanization in the country. Another factor is the fact that the country is experiencing a major rural-urban migration. So many people, and that is why the data where Dr. Agyemang presented the data that about 55% of the people in the country live in urban centers. And so the urban centers are now being congested because of the population. And so these are now placed demand on transport services, on transport supply in the country. The fixtures now shows the different means of road transportation in urban centers, in a typical urban center in Nigeria, especially in Lagos. And it shows that the first picture shows that we have this means of transport by motorcycles, and the other one by minibuses, which we call danfos. And we see that from this picture, we see a lot of people struggling to access transportation means in urban center. And again, because of this urbanization and the rural-urban migration, there is this congestion on our roads. Now, the supply of roads and transport services can no longer take care or cater for the demand of transport service because of the population and urbanization factor that is prominent or dominant in the country. And the government of the country has been making serious efforts to address this challenge by improving on the transport supply. And this made the government to construct the BRT, dedicated lane for bus rapid transit. And the government acquired a number of buses such that it will be able to provide mobility for the citizen. However, because of the increasing surge in population and the urbanization, the rural-urban drift, then it seems that the supply, it's not still capable to meet up with the demand. And so even for the dedicated BRT, bus rapid transit, You see, you have a lot of queues to wait down, queues for passengers that will want to access this bus traffic. So this has been the characteristics, of road transportation or urban transport in Nigeria, resulting from urbanization and mobility challenges that take place in a typical city in Nigeria, just because of the population of the city. Lagos is a state, it's one of the 36 states in Nigeria that is highly populated. So after that, we now look at this general issues with research and publication from the literature. So we found that the general problem we have with research and publication that is just not that is also peculiar to Nigeria is the issue of data availability and accessibility. Many times researchers will like to conduct research excellently, but inavailability and inadequacy, and then the accessibility, lack of accessibility to this data will make research, it's frustrating researchers in the country. And so it's a problem and an issue that we face. The other one is the issue about weak interdisciplinary collaboration with other fields, with others in the environmental studies, those in engineering, those even in medical field, when we talk about the environmental impact of transport services, the transport services on the environment, and many and so on. So the other point with number 3 is the funding constraints, which is general to most countries in Africa, to most countries to most developing countries, not just in Africa, but even developing countries. Funding constraint, funds to organize research, funds to get equipment and facilities, and so on and so forth. So these are general issues that we identified. The other one is there are 4 points, is the low dissemination of research findings. I see opportunity to attend conferences, workshops, and then participate in disseminating research findings. Number 5 is facilities and infrastructure efficiency. And then number 6, institutional and policy challenges. Then 7, publication barriers. These are points that were generated from the literature, but we're going to look at it for a case for Nigeria in the preceding slides. Now, we conducted our survey. While we conducted our survey, as it was described by Dr. Ernest Agyemang the other time, that the survey was conducted online to professionals, transport professionals, both in Ghana and in Nigeria. So the result of this survey for Nigeria is what I will be focusing on and I will be presenting. If you will look at the first slide by my left now, that is cost of proofreading original manuscript. So we see this as a challenge. And this is just the fact that it's just an occasional challenge to the country, to researchers in the country. It's an occasional challenge to this country. Why? The reason is this. The reason is not far-fetched because Nigeria is a country that speaks English as a general language. So most Nigerians and anyone that will go to study, that have to study in Nigeria, will have adequate understanding of English language in writing and in speaking. And so that is why the additional cost for proofreading original manuscript is just an occasional issue and not an issue that is always. Difficulty in translating English-based constructs to local language. And this is a major issue, and it's an always issue that is always a challenge to survey research in Nigeria. The reason is this. There are some constructs in English that has been written in English language that has to be interpreted to local people who do not understand English adequately, 1. And 2, when even the researcher did not have the capacity to be able to translate the constructs as to make the participant or respondents to understand the construct so that they were able to give accurate response to it. So it's an issue that it's a challenge to survey responses, to transport survey responses in the country. The next one here, underneath this one to my right, is apathy and limited interest by participants. You see, this is an issue that because you are just conducting your own research, the person that will want to, the participant, the prospective participant, they don't care they don't care what outcome about what you have with your research or whatever you want to achieve with your research. It's not their business. It's not their business. This reminded me of when I was conducting my PhD research. It happens both in Nigeria and in Ghana. when I conducted my PhD research in Ghana, and I was collecting data in Ghana. I went to the airport, KIA airport, one day. And when I got there, I was interviewed. So I was saying, man, guy, I want to, let me help me with this. Yes, oh, what are you talking? Do I have money? No money. I said, don't have time. Doesn't have time. So the attitude was just like, he doesn't have time for me because there is nothing I'm good. There is no benefit he's going to gain for completing my questionnaire for me. The same way in Nigeria, it's an occurrence, it's an experience that has been always, and it's been repeating itself over the years. Over the years that we've been conducting research in transport survey, it is an experience that the participants are not always interested to provide information or to complete either questionnaire, or even if you are doing the survey, we are conducting interview, or we are conducting focus group discussion, they may not be interested in it. And so it's an issue. Another one is the stifling of research innovations by funders. In this case, the funders will want to determine what the outcome of the research should be. Well, want to indirectly or directly state so that it will be pleasing to what they desire. So sometimes the innovations are being stifled by funders. That is if they are right. Then the next one is the difficulty in accessing published literature online. You see, because most databases require organizations or individuals to pay subscription fee at an annual basis or whichever before we can have access to published articles online. But because of issues about funding, limited funding, most research organizations in the country do not subscribe to these online databases such that researchers will have free access to download literature. However, there are other ways to go around this. What are the other ways to go around this? That we have access to download literatures that are open access. So that is why the result is showing to us here that occasionally we have this problem, and then always we also have the problem. The next one is high article publishing charge. The article publishing charge of most high impact journals to us in Nigeria, it's too high. $1,700, $2,000, $1,500. This is too high for individual to provide, to raise and decide to pay because we want to get articles published in high impact journal or in these journals. So high article publishing charge is a challenge to transport research in Nigeria. And again, too, there is limited training and retraining and opportunities for conference attendance. It's limited. It's been scheduled that because the fund that will have to be provided to train and retrain and to send staff and researchers to participate in international conferences is limited. And so the opportunity is always limited. And it has been a case. The respondent shows that it's a case that is always happening. It's an experience, daily experience, if I will put it that way, or yearly experience, if I put it that way, depending on the schedule of the conferences that the researcher will like to attend. So it's a challenge. Another one is limited access to literature on Nigeria. Okay, limited access to literature on Nigeria. So many times when we want to use Nigeria as case studies, the literature are always limited until we have to generalize from global perspective. Then we have to bring it back down to the case in Nigeria and Africa. So difficulty in analyzing data. I see this is a challenge with individuals who do not have the skill to conduct analytical skill, to acquire analytical skill and techniques to analyze their data. So many times it is happening, but most of this challenge arise from many times access to softwares. When one doesn't have access, because these softwares are always for subscription, and they are always at a huge amount of money. So the other is on delay and long review period for publishing. And this is a case that is always, it's a case that's always in the country. And we have this undue delay that we have to wait 2 hours, 2 years sometimes before a paper you submit in, for example, January 2024, you will get response from editors and reviewers, maybe after 6 months, after 1 year, after 9 months, so that before they will say they are ready, even after it has been accepted. Some journals will still have to keep the manuscript for several months before it will be published. So it's a challenge. It's a challenge. The next one is difficulty in collecting data for research. So it has been an always challenge to collect data for research. Data issue is an issue. Then limited literature on Nigeria, which I said it here. So after all these descriptive analysis of the data we collected with the survey research, we also had a session. We had a session in the survey research where the respondents were to give qualitative data. So they were open to express their view about the significant, out of all these challenges, which ones are the most significant to them. So after the data were collected, I was able to look at the data, then try to summarize the data such that to be able to make it in a way that is to make it compact for presentation. So after everything, all the comments that the respondent made, we found 5 critical or most significant factors that affect transport research in Nigeria. Social research and publication in Nigeria. Number 1 is funding. Number 2 is perception of transport and role in development, the perception they have about transport. And number 3, data collection, data reliability, and data analysis. Number 4 is the issue about poor review response. And then number 5, poor collaboration. So the respondents were given the privilege to give their open-ended opinion about the most difficult challenge that they have. Now, for funding, these were not limited to maybe funding for research, for the conduct of research alone. It was also, they expanded that even fund to acquire equipment, to acquire facilities, and even access to limited technologies. For example, the internet facilities that will give access to broader access to information, global information. Then asset funds to acquire some softwares for the analysis, books, and then publication charges. Then, after all, the more important issue about this funding that was emphasized by the respondent was the issue about funding to attend to participate in conferences and workshops so that they'll be able to disseminate their research outputs and innovations. So funding, it's just an issue that has different areas. Different aspects that it needs to cover for a research conduct to be successful.
Joseph, you have some 5 minutes to wrap up, please. Thank you.
Okay, welcome. So the other one is the perception of transport. The perception about transport, the role of transport in development. The transport is not just for people to move from one place to the other. So participants highlighted these are challenges. So they receive poor responses when they ask about questions where they are about to collect data for research. The other aspect is the data collection, reliability, and analysis. Difficulty about data collection, unavailability of secondary data, inaccessibility to data, even the ones that are available, accessibility is not there due to bureaucracy in obtaining data from some government and non-government organizations. So there is still bureaucracy. Then the issue about poor review response is that some journal editors and appointed reviewers serve as major challenge with the belief that African research outputs have been stereotyped. They stereotype it so that even if it comes, the comments that you will read about a review, a reviewer will post across to a researcher or an author will be so demeaning that it's a challenge and it's always discouraging. The last point is about collaboration. Some young researchers who desire to grow will find it so difficult to enjoy fruitful collaboration with established researchers, even within the country, across the globe in Africa, and then globally. I think these are the major challenges, the most significant challenges that we found from the qualitative data that we collected. Thank you very much for listening.
All right. Thank you, Joseph. So as I earlier on explained to you, our
I would like to.
Yes, so stop sharing and I can share mine. So
Yes,
Joseph and I had some useful discussion on how we want to do this. So in terms of the way forward, my job will be to share that with you as we both agreed. But then I would briefly run you through, if you can see my screen. Joseph, can you see my screen, please?
I can't see your screen yet.
You can, okay. I think
I can see you, but I can't see your screen.
Okay, please, just a moment. Let me, oh, yeah, I need to share first. Can you see the screen now?
Not yet.
Yes.
It's
all
all
right. All right, sure. Thank you so much. So what I seek to do is to briefly touch base with what Joseph had shared with us. Already, as he's already said, similarly to Nigeria, Ghana is also fast urbanizing. When you come to Ghana, we have all sort of transport modes, including active transport, if you want to walk or bike. If you want to use informal mobility options like Okada, which is a motor taxi, or if you want to use shared taxi, or since 2016, we have these ride-hailing companies, Yango, Bolt, Uber, and the likes. But the most popular way of moving around in Ghanaian cities, especially Accra, is the use of these mini buses. In Nigeria, he says they call it Moluwe. In Ghana, we call them Trotro. The government of Ghana has made giant strides to improve on mobility with the introduction of high occupancy buses, the Metro Mass Transit, the QBS, the Quality Bus Service, Ayalolo, and we also have train service, light rail services in our country. Now, he's already mentioned some of the challenges that our respondents said. I will just run through a few of them and then try to share my own experience with you as well. So he didn't mention about capacity issues. So some of us who are already teaching, I'm teaching such a huge class, right? And so to think that I have to devote time for research is a whole experience. And that's what most of our respondents also said. Issues about limited grantees mentioned that. And then bureaucracies is mentioned that. Then a pay-to-view policy. Sometimes if you want to assess existing literature to provide ample theoretical background for your current study, it can be such a difficulty, right? And so that's what most of our participants have said they always encounter. Then issues about rejection, even without feedback from journal editors, was also considered occasionally among our respondents. And so as part of the study, we asked them to, at the end of all of these challenges, can they list the most significant challenges? And as you can see from the word cloud, funds for research, then the uptake of research. You do all this research and government, authorities do not even care a hoof to use them in policy. So it can be very demoralizing. Then bureaucracies, they mentioned that. So I was curious to know, then how do you circumvent all of this as a researcher, as a planner in transport, as a scientist? And these are some few interview quotes. One of them, a male professor, says, on the issue of the pay-to-view, I mostly depend on friends in foreign universities who have access to download and they share. So I'll call a friend in the States or in Europe, and then he will share from the university system, download and then share with me. A female lecturer also says, I will come this challenge with limited data by using data from other countries. And then the third one, a male researcher says, I use data from selected consultancy services for publication. And then guess what he says? I also use part of my salary to fund some of my own research. And talking about using your own meager salary, I just want to share one experience of mine. So this paper is on COVID-19. It took well over 3 years after being rejected by different transport journals. I took it originally to Transport Research Interdisciplinary Perspectives. It was rejected. Journal of Transport also rejected it. The case study on transport policy and a few others. And eventually, MDPI decided to accept, International Journal of Environmental Research and Public Health. And after we went through the reviews, we were accepted, but we're supposed to pay a whopping $2,735 US. Now, fortunately and thankfully, my university is in collaboration with the Carnegie Corporation of New York and had won some seed grant. But for that seed grant, there was no way this paper was going to see the light of day. And just to put it in perspective, not long ago, I saw this post on X somebody had put out the average, monthly salary of university staff in Ghana, and it's roughly around 6,000 cedis. Now, for the sake of our international audience, 6,000 cedis in more recent times is equivalent of $400 a month. That's what an average university lecturer is earning. Now, you must have read about the analogy of Sisyphus, that Greek mythology. This guy called Sisyphus was cursed by the gods to roll up a stone up the hill. And I want us to imagine the poor university lecturer and his relationship with journals wherein he needs to pay article processing charges. Now, at the cost of $2,735 that I'm supposed to pay, that would be equivalent of 7 months of my salary. If I decide not to fuel my vehicle, and just to use my salary to pay article processing fees, that would be 7 months of savings of my salaries. And so, having said that, what is the way forward? And I want to close with some closing remarks that we cannot reflect, and then I will invite your feedback in terms of what you also think. If you need for clarity, if you need to also make suggestions, then we can improve on the discourse. So first of all, the first take-home message from this workshop today is that definitely, without a doubt, there has been a global domination of science by the global north. Indeed, not long ago, the National Science Foundation of the US put out this information that for the first time, China, for instance, in terms of researches published in science and engineering, China, from the whole globe, China, it's about 21%. Then the US, India is there, Germany, Japan. I mean, the majority are the industrialized countries. And this is a map of the world, right? This is a map of the entire globe of the world. Now, assuming we were to redraw the boundaries, right, as you see it now, assuming we were to redraw this on the basis of scientific publications that came out in 2016 from across the globe, this is how the world will now look like. Africa is a green. Africa would be lost, in the global scheme of things. And, other continents like North America, like Europe, like China are very bulgy. These are huge continents in terms of the papers that were churned out, in terms of the scientific research. So generally, in terms of scientific research, the global north is leading. And the second point I want to emphasize, that we cannot have this conversation without looking at how Africa was introduced into the global scheme of things. You must have heard about colonization. We are all very much aware. Recently, I was reading an article by linguistic, and she talks about the role of money and technology in pushing science. We need the money, we need the resources to conduct research, and also the technology, right? But African science has been an interesting one. Now, Suyamurthy in 2023 believes that Africa's colonial history is also to blame for the kinds of, scientific underdevelopment of the continent. It was delayed. And so I saw this framework from Cummins et al., where they look at systemic injustice. They look at issues of neoliberal publishing. I mean, the journal editors, the publishing houses also want to make their money. So of course, you need to pay for the application, article processing cost and the likes. The point is that they may be justified. They need to pay the reviewers and the editors. But the point is that for some of us who need to dole out 7 months of our salaries, you could just imagine the impact on us. And these are all some. So the whole thinking is that you can sympathize with me on how poor I'm being paid, right? You can sympathize with me like Sisyphus trying to pull or roll up the rock up the hill. But until we all have a conversation around trying to decolonize knowledge production and dissemination, until we do that, then the recommendations that our participants put to the fore will not really make any inroads. These are some proposals that were put up. If you listen to Joseph carefully, he mentions some of these challenges, and this is a summary of what our participants think we should be focusing attention on. So, for instance, there's a need to ensure capacity. There's a need to support data acquisition. I already mentioned that, but for the support of Carnegie Corporation, that paper would never have seen the light of day. And with quite a number of them, my PhD was funded by Danida, the Danish government. My master's was funded by the Norwegian government. But the point is that to what extent do you also build capacity, right? In terms of our own governments dedicating funds to promote research and development. How do you incentivize the private sector to also come in terms of promoting and supporting transport research? How do we partner with international organizations? And then what is partnership? How do you partner in terms of co-producing the knowledge so that it doesn't become the usual mantra that he who pays the piper, calls a tune, right? So that the development priorities, the agenda, the theme for research are not controlled from external forces, but then you co-opt the local investigators on board. And these are all some of the findings that were made. For the sake of time, I can't go through all of them, but I think that if we reflect on these, it will be a lot easier for us to churn, if like, a lot more research from the African continent. Thank you so much for doing the listening for this part of the conversation. I decided to be brief so that in my second role as the chair of this session, I can then open up the floor. I don't want to be seen to be talking too much. At least we have some 40 minutes. That's what the agreed challenge, that we're going to then open the floor for some good feedback in terms of what your own critical minds are saying. And then if there are questions, then we'll take the time to respond to them. But whilst you are thinking, and of course you could activate the hands up icon so that you know who has my attention. But whilst you're at it, I just want to remind us that Bath began the first presentation by focusing on accessibility, cross-border accessibility, and the fact that there is this, decision to develop infrastructure, but then somehow some people are the losing end, others are benefiting. The local production is suffering. Meanwhile, the external ones, so from Rwanda in terms of cassava, while DRC farmers are not happy, I think the Rwandans are very excited. So there are issues that we need to talk about. How do we ensure development whilst at the same time ensuring that people are not left off, are not made worse off, and that they also benefit from the dividends that accrue to development? I think that's what I heard from him. And then Joseph also highlighted the situation in Nigeria. He highlighted the challenges, including how we get data, how we analyze the data, how we try to put it out there for public consumption in terms of publication, and the difficulties that we go through. And then I came in to share briefly the Ghanaian experience, my own experience as a researcher in my university, and to conclude with some food for thought in terms of trying to decolonize and de-racialize research. I think that's the way to go. So I haven't yet seen any hands yet, but I am hoping that I would see, you can raise your hand up, and then you can then unmute. So maybe I'll stop sharing my screen now whilst I open the floor for questions. Thank you so much. I'm able to see the entire screen, but I hope that, okay, so Charlene, your hand is up. Yes.
Okay, thank you so much. Can you hear me? Yeah. So this presentation, this session is recorded. Sorry, in the beginning, it was a bit chaotic. I just want to thank so much for the 3 presentations. I learned really a lot, and I think they are very critical aspects we need to discuss about the publication, all these, how the transport research. I think it's not just transport research, it's also many areas, but transport research, as in this case, really how to be able to encourage and then be published, and all these challenges are really, really important. So I have, and I also really impressed by the presentation, which Bas in the beginning talking about his PhD regarding the road connections, the cross-border ones, and the differences between these different situations, these different materials. So I think the first I would like to make, and perhaps as a beginning, and I believe there will be more questions from the floor, is for Bas first about his research. And I think I didn't really know much about geography, about African countries. And I just wonder, can you please talk a little bit more about how this role has been discussed? And then because all these, I think countries are much bigger in the Congo and the DCR, DRC, and the other two countries are much smaller. So I just wonder whether that sort of international cross-border line or role was built, but was made possible because of some agreement, and whether there's a kind of one of the reasons why there are some differences among these different places.
All right. So that's a question to you, Beth. I was hoping that if you can collect at least 2 more questions so that we maximize the time and then we can take turns to respond. But the question that came from Charlene was whether there was some sort of agreement, and if there was an agreement, and for instance, Rwanda decides to pump a lot more funds, then you'd expect that Rwanda will benefit a lot more. Is that what it is? Or is it an issue of equity? I think those are the very issues that should be of concern to us as transport researchers, in terms of promoting infrastructure development on the one hand, and also ensuring that everyone is carried along and everyone is happy. I think that's what the question is. But are there any more questions or some reflections? Else, I invite Beth to respond to this particular one. Okay.
Hello.
Yes, please. Yeah, Beth, go ahead.
Okay. If I understood well the question, it was first to understand how it was maybe easy to compare the DR Congo to the Rwanda and Burundi, given that the DR Congo is bigger, maybe than Rwanda and Burundi. And I think my methodology was able to produce comparative results in that I focused on specific territories that are comparable. This is here in the case of Congo is specifically in the South Kivu. The South Kivu is a small territory that's comparable to the Rwanda. So I didn't analyze in terms of the macro situation, but it's on specific micro situation. So this made my result comparable given the differences in terms of size between those 3 countries. Now, really, I think it's also a problem. Effectively, there is a problem of geographical equity. That's why I problematized the geographical equity to see that from those projects that usually internationally founded, to show that there are some countries that can benefit more than others. And theoretically, this has been supported and maybe demonstrated by Paul Krugman in the New Economic Geography when he analyzed the relationship between transportation development and the development of the world in general. But this was at the global scale. And he showed that geographical inequalities can result from development improvements, giving benefits to those countries which are more developed. That was at the international or global scale. That's why I came with the same debate, by this time at the small scale. That's how I can globally respond if I understood well the question.
Okay, sure. Thank you for the feedback. Yes, so Charlene has just tried to say that it makes sense to her, and I think that's how research is all about. So yes, there may be huge geographical regions or countries, but once you can justify your methodology, I mean, that's the essence of science. So by all means, it makes sense to us. Are there a few more points for reflection, or there are questions? I was just wondering. Okay, yeah, Frederick, please, you have the floor.
Thanks, Ernest, and good afternoon, everyone. I would like first to thank those 3 speakers as well. So it was very interesting. But I have maybe a comment, more especially for Joseph. So about the cost of conducting research and especially of publishing. So you mentioned very interesting things, but I think that first, most transportation journals do not require any publication fees as long as you don't want to offer open access to the readers. But so you can publish to the Journal of Transport Geography for free, definitely. Of course, you need your paper to be accepted, which is likely the most challenging thing. But when it is accepted, you don't have to pay anything. Second, you can access freely to much more publication than before through open access websites such as ResearchGate. So today it has made research much more accessible than before. And lastly, so of course, translations and proofreading are very expensive in the absolute, but if you use IA tools like DeepL, ChatGPT, and the like, you can easily get good results for free again. So I think that the cost of publication today can be really circumvented to a significant extent. So that was my comment to Joseph.
Yeah, thank you so much, Frederick, for the feedback. I mean, I couldn't agree with you more. You are very right that Transport Geography have published one earlier paper in that. They were generous enough to accept. It went through review, thorough review, and then was eventually published. But I think my real issue is the benefits of publishing open access. I think that's something that we cannot debate on. The fact that the visibility you get from publishing open access, it's so impactful. And then again, for the sake of the profession that we've taken upon ourselves, if your research is behind a paywall, someone needs to pay before you can access your research. And you have other, researcher doing the same thematic area, but maybe the institution or the state has some funds and they're supporting to publish open access. I think the visibility, the impact might not be the same. So I think that's where I was coming from. So I do agree that there are opportunities, even for my university. I think I've seen some Elsevier journals that would say if the first author or the corresponding author is from a third world country, they waive off the APC. So I know these opportunities do exist, which I'm grateful you are reiterating, at least for the benefit of some of members of our audience who need to know. But I think publishing open access should be the way to go for all of us, irrespective of whether you can afford or not.
Yeah. If I can add, I've never paid to be published open access. I think some of my papers have been cited nevertheless, and in any case, you can still broadcast your research through ResearchGate and academia and other websites like this. So the compromise could be to publish in international journals for free and to make your publication open access through ResearchGate and those kind of illegal websites, but that everyone uses today. So that could be I think an acceptable compromise.
I very much agree. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Are there any more thoughts? Charling, your hand is up.
Yeah, I think I would like to also contribute to this point. I even in the West, I mean, in the UK, a lot of open access journal, of course, is free, and I think there's also a kind of reduction possibility in terms of the financial situation in the UK higher education. A lot of university also drop out of the subscriptions to the international journals, and so I think you just respond to what you just also Ernest and Joseph was presenting, in terms of how we share each other. Even if you want to get us open access, which is not from your own country or university, you can receive from other colleagues from other country. That is also there's a risk of kind of for us, even we don't really know how in the future we are able to get open access because we have an agreement, we don't need to pay, but that kind of in a danger of risk of losing it as well. And another aspect I think is really about MDPI thing. This I feel a bit heartbreaking when you mention about a lot of attempts to, for example, Journal of Transport Geography or other case study or other journal, transport research journals, and then you have to go to NTPI in order to be published. And then in order to be published, you have to pay. And I think it's not just NTPI. I think there are some similar ones. They charge you $2,000 US or 900 or whatever. It's in proportion to your salary, and I think it's not fair. The problem is, I think in the West, I think we tend not to look at NDPI papers now. It's the problem. If we publish NDPI, it looks like discouraged. Also, in terms of the, I don't know that it's not. I don't think it's the quality, but I think it's more like a tendency. The process of review and whether there's a compromise or I believe there are a lot of good journals, for example, sustainability. Before, but now it's more like a discouraged from my colleagues or university. There's a kind of situation. So I feel it's a bit difficult and kind of very tricky situation for international publications, and how can we ensure open access, because really we want to have impacts from open access, but there's a market, there's a barriers, there's a this kind of thing. I think this is more. I just share my experience. I believe there are much more colleagues would like to share their experience, but because this is not just my problem, I think it's everyone's academic problems. Yeah, so I'll just share my experience and thoughts, and I think welcome everyone can share their own.
Yeah, I think that's the essence of this conversation. And listening to you, I've been putting out some points which I think would also help my own professional development. So this platform, it's also one that presenters, myself, Joseph, Bath, we are very happy to be here. And also for the audience, we're hoping to get a lot more feedback. So it's one thing to sit somewhere in your small corner, small part of the world, and brood over your challenges and difficulties. But once we get a platform, we all talk about these things. It becomes a lot more it becomes some sort of a solution of a kind to the problem. So if there are a few more thoughts or a few more questions, then I think we have some few minutes, then my session will be over. If there are some more questions or food for thought, you heard Bath talked about his own PhD research, and as he tells us, he's going to defend it this coming Saturday. So we wish you the very best. We do hope. Yeah, he's going to defend his doctoral thesis. Yes, so
I can see there's one hand. Yeah.
Yeah, Tony Plumbe. I hope I'm able to pronounce your name well. Tony, can you unmute? Yeah, you're already unmuted. Please go ahead.
Thank you very much. And 3 fascinating interpretations and presentations. The first point that I wanted to raise was just how is this going to be available as a recording afterwards? And where you've given references, can someone please enlighten me as to where I might see them in the future? That's just in terms of feedback from this particular webinar. The other points that I want to move on to were the use of mobile phone data, because mobile phones are fairly extensively available in the continent of Africa, and none of you as presenters mentioned that as a possible data source. Now, again, I'm conscious that in the northern countries, mobile phone data is a major source being used in transport studies now. And then another point about the publication side, where you have access to the web, I wonder to what extent individuals had their own websites that they didn't have to pay for, and could publish the material on their own websites, which then everybody else could access. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. I think, Charlene, you would respond to the question on, where we have recording and where we can get that from.
Yeah. So we recorded, so now is recording still. And the beginning part, I think we missed a little bit. I think I will talk to Ernest to see how can we record it and then to combine. And once we have that, we will make it available on our website. Yeah.
All right, sure. Thank you. But I think you also make, Tony, you make some very interesting points on the use of mobile phones. Indeed, mobile phones are very, very popular now, and people are having maybe more than one at a time. I think I couldn't read some of the interview quotes from our participants in terms of how we can address the data acquisition problem. And I think number 1, 2, 3, 4. Number 3 is to, so I couldn't read, but it's there in a table. I utilize the mobile phone penetration to collect and share real-time data. And this was in addition to some recommendation to develop centralized data repositories, and that we should leverage on the thriving fintech sector to innovate public transport data collection and payment options. And the third one, as I said, was on the use of mobile phone. And then the collaboration with transport operators and tech companies like the ride-hailing apps to secure data sets. So it's something that was captured, but I think I was trying to save on time, so I didn't mention that. But on the issue of people having their own individual websites and then putting a research, I think it's some food for thought that we need to reflect on. Except that for the kind of work that we do, so I'm a lecturer. Before I get promoted to a professorial rank, I need to have published in peer-reviewed journal articles. And so in effect, the idea of going solo, the idea of putting your research maybe non-peer-reviewed on a website may not count towards promotion. And so that might be a disincentive. I'm not sure if you may want to respond to that. It might be a disincentive for me to do my research and put on, so the Department of Geography has a website, but once you put it out there and has not been reviewed through the peer review mechanism, chances are that it may not count towards your publications that are, that are going to be credited and for which you're going to be promoted for. So that's my response to that. I think there was one hand, Solomon. Can you mute him?
Yes, please. Thank you, Doc, for the opportunity. And I must say the presentation was intriguing, 1, 2 as well. Yeah, but my question will be on the second presentation, where he had a chart that the results of survey responses on transport research challenges in Nigeria. And an element on it was apathy and limited interest by participants. Yeah, so for my research, when I was doing I'm still doing my research. So when I was doing my field exploration, so I'm looking at tricycle services, how they are spatially distributed and how they operate. So the operational characteristics. So I was trying to tour the study area to first have a fair knowledge idea about it. So fortunately for me, one of the field exploration I was doing, I went with a lady. So I don't know why that day I went with a lady. So when I got there, I was trying to speak to the operators. They didn't want to mind me initially. They didn't want to mind me. They didn't want to give me a listening ear. Then later, 2 of them were like, okay, if they will mind me, it will be on the basis that after the talk I will have with them, they will have the lady's number. And the lady was like, okay, fine. Let's deal with what we came here for. Then we'll talk about that later. And they didn't want to agree. They wanted us to have a deal on that before. Yes, and even that. So we and she was like, okay, fine, I'll give you my number. So you respond to what he needs. Then we did. And later on, she didn't really give her number out. And even on that, I'm also asking myself questions that, okay, if you have a participant not interested in your research, but you think that the participant will be so much of help and the person wouldn't join, what would be the causing factor of that? Because we've had a lot of research done, especially in the African continent, and sitting in the shelves of universities and stuff. And I mean, when you have an article and you read, you could tell that the recommendations the researcher has put forth, which will be so much helpful. Meanwhile, we have we have governments who are not even patronizing these researches. So then, I mean, what will be the essence of it? Aside that, and the second is that, okay, you are engaging a participant for a research, and after all, the best would be like, what would I get in it? I mean, if the research is not being funded, and if you are using your personal money, and I mean, you don't have that enough money to sort every participant out, they tend out to turn you down. And so getting the data from them also becomes very challenging. So I'm trying to think about how such problem will be solved, where we'll have majority of the population or people so interested to partake in research, even without demanding any anything. Yes, please.
All right, sure. Thanks so much, Slomo, for your feedback. Joseph, would you want to react to that in terms of the apathy from participants? I'm not sure if that day that you were doing your research and you went to KIA, Kotoka International Airport, did you take a lady along? Be sure to take a beautiful one as well. Is Joseph still on the call? Joseph, can you unmute and respond to Solomon?
Hey, sorry, please, can you please
sorry. So he narrated his own experience about the unwillingness of participants, and in his case, he told a story about how a lady who acted as if like a community entrant assisted in eventually breaking the ice for the participants to contribute. I mean, imagine you walk into a community and they're not willing to participate. They are apathetic towards research. Mm-hmm. How do you go about it?
Oh, yeah, many times when I have this issue, especially for example, if it's to be in rural areas, I come down, I always come down to relate at their level.
Okay.
Peanuts. So sometimes you say, peanuts, sometimes you say, okay, let's sit down and then let's gist. When we are gisting, then I buy things. Or I go somewhere, they ask for money, so I give money. So when I give money, they know, okay, they are settled themselves now, they have eaten. Because they will tell me, I have not eaten since yesterday and you want to ask me a question? I'm doing my work to make me get money to eat. Now I want to take his time, so I have to pay for the time. So I give money to I buy food, eat. If they've eaten, then come, let us discuss. Or then come, please fill this questionnaire for me. This is how I've been going about this use at this over the years.
That's very interesting.
So it's from personality.
Yes. And for me, it's very interesting. I mean, there are international audiences within, and maybe their researches may be funded such that, I mean, I recently did some work in Accra and Kumasi on transport accessibility, which was funded by the OECD. So we had funds whereby after the research, we assured all the participants, so ahead of the survey, would assure you that if you complete, then we'll take your contact, you'll be entered into a raffle, after which some lucky numbers will be picked, and then they will be given some little tokens of appreciation.
The money.
That worked. But I'm just wondering, in terms of ethics, Charlene, you are here. There are also some of our colleagues from from Europe and from the States. And I mean, is this something that we may encourage? How does it compromise on integrity of our data generation? And if we don't do it that way, we never even get any data to start with. I wonder what your thoughts are.
If we don't go that way, we'll not get data. Anyway, the ethic comes in because we are not supposed to say, also we give, we motivate. But this, sometimes we look at it from the other angle that we got to motivate these people so that we get what we will need from them. Now, but the challenge is what we need for them is not their problem. What we need the research for is not their concern. So I got to go extra mile to give or to spend the money. But the ethics comes in when if I'm not influencing their expression. So I'm careful never to influence, because by the time I begin to influence their expression in the questionnaire or in the responses, the ethics issues now come, wrong ethic issues now comes in. So I leave them to be independent of the responses they go to give. But I will bear the responsibility to motivate them to make sure that I get their response.
Sure. Thanks so much for sharing that insight. I think I've seen Simisola's hand. Would you want to, yes.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Very interesting presentations. Thank you so much to the three presenters, and also very interesting conversations. So I'm a researcher. I'm from Nigeria as well. And I just wanted to touch on two things. I wanted to speak on the ethical aspects of, giving money to have participants actually contribute to the research. And I like what Joseph has just said in terms of the fact that as long as you don't influence their responses, because I was a bit concerned that how do you ensure that you don't introduce some form of bias? Because if they have indicated that they do not want to participate because, hey, they're busy, they're trying to go about their day, and then you now kind of give them money, does it in any way, it would some way, affect the trueness of the data being collected, in my opinion. And one of the things I've learned as a new researcher pretty much is that having no responses is also, a result. It may not be what we want to achieve, right? But what I've learned over the last few years is that it's actually a result. And how do we attack that reluctancy? Why are people reluctant to participate in transport research in Africa's cities? We have to be able to let them know that transport actually is their business. What we're researching is their business. Whatever it is, even if it's travel time, if it's public transport, if it's satisfaction, even if it's just about bus operations, it is for ultimately the people in these African cities. So how do we bring it down to their level to ensure that they're educated on how the research connects to them in their everyday real life activities? How does it make their life better? Regardless of whatever transport research you may be doing, it has an impact on the people. So I feel like finding ways, and this is just a takeaway for me and for everyone that is carrying out research, because it is a challenge for sure, and we have to find a way to educate the people of the importance of transport. It was one of the the issues that he had raised with in Nigeria, perception of transport and the role in development. How do we ensure that all the various stakeholders know the importance of transport? And how do we, perhaps their blog posts, bringing it down to their level, finding news, the radios, just to find ways to pitch this out there and put it out there that this research is helpful, this research is important, and we're gathering data for so and so reason. I'll just stop there, and thank you very much for this topic, and I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Simisola, for your insight. Charlene, your hand is up.
Yeah, I think just respond to these ethics things regarding the data collections and how to get the participants willing to join. I think in the UK, as far as I understand, and also my previous experiences from China when I was there doing 3 years, it's possible if you want to, for example, encourage them to participate, and you might be able to give them, for example, a pen or a kind of souvenir thing. But it's not really a money or amount of money to do this, and I think that's allowed. So I think there's a kind of balance about how to get them into in participation. I just want to maybe one more point about how to make the way forward and respond to what you meant. You all kind of mentioned about the role of the state and also the impacts. And I feel and also the data you show, like China now is like a 20th. I mean, the population in the world is about more than US, and I think the population also much more. So it doesn't really surprise, it's not a surprising figure. But I feel the role of state is quite important. So the Chinese academics are encouraged to publish, and in a publish they have a award to publication, which I don't think is really a necessary, very a right way, because it's more like focusing on numbers. But there's a demonstration of the state, if they want to have the power or more encourage research, and then there's a policy. So I'm thinking whether the African countries, or for example, Ghana or Nigeria, and those your colleagues are located, could propose to the government, and then there's to a kind of encourage or promote from the top, and then also, at the same time, we still do our own thing, collaborate with the other universities. I think we need to do a lot of these kind of things from different angles to make it improved. Yeah.
Exactly. I agree with you that local government also needs to take this as a project going forward. I think it's the way to go. It's the way to go. Joseph, your hand is up. Would you want to react?
Okay, yeah. I want to just react about the comment that Simisola make. I really want to appreciate her for that. Another way to motivate these people, another technique I use is, for example, if it's a community-based or a community-based research, a research that I want to get the data in the community, I will first go meet the leader of such community, then present the benefit that my research will give to the community. So when I present the benefit that research will be to the community, they will be it usually motivated that, it means when I'm done with this, government may come to construct their road for them, government may come to build their bridges, they will say, I will say yes. They will ask questions, it means this camp, I say yes. So they get motivated. It is now the leaders of this community that will now go and talk to the people that they should respond to my questionnaire, if I'm not this questionnaire. And so other bodies too. That's one of the ways to go about it. We tell them about the benefit about the benefit of the research, get them convinced, and they'll be motivated to respond to the questionnaire.
All right, sure. So from Isaac Wunche, he says he would like to know how we circumvent political interference in research. So Charlene just mentioned China doing this deliberately. I mean, if for nothing, in the current discourse between Trump's America and Xi Jinping's China, this geopolitics. So to the extent that China has even beaten the States to it in terms of scientific publication, may score a point for the Chinese government, for which reason they are willing to pursue this. And so the question is, how do we circumvent political interference? Certainly, for us, we produce knowledge. And so I think that ties in with the last submission from Joseph, that community entrance, maybe the local assembly member, you explain to him, or the local chief, you explain that these are the benefits. But I think we should also be very mindful as to how much we promise them, because we can only produce and then produce journal articles. We cannot really make so much promises to the participants, because governments have different priorities. So I think that's some word of sign on that. But Charlene, maybe you would respond to political interference. Per my watch, we have 3 minutes to the end of the session. And maybe if there are, you want to thank our audience. They've been very fantastic in terms of feedback. And then if there are, announcements of future engagement, you want to have the final say, Charlene.
I think, yeah, I would say from my experiences in China or the UK, I think the political interference, as long as we always have some promotion. For example, the UK government would like to, other countries would like to promote the net zero or climate change. I think they will try to direct the funding towards some certain directions. I think that's the one way the state try to intervene. But I think we don't want to intervene is really to block the freedom of speech or freedom of research. I think that's what I think we just need to, to speak do what we think we should do. Yeah, and I believe Fred or other colleagues must have something to say about this. And I hope if we want to be able to do the right research or the research we need to do, and I think try to create more debates and also reveal the issues, what we really want to address. I think we really need to have more international collaboration, because I think if there's a platform where we can all try to communicate and share what we feel, instead of block the channel and then try to be able to make the voice heard. And I think this is a great place to do. And I think, okay, so I think the time is 2 o'clock and okay, Fred, yes, it's a great suggestion. And I'm going to this is a good item on agenda. And I think we have another steering committee member, for Johnny, she would like to do something about women, in transport. And I think gender balance in transport geography in and on Africa is definitely a topic we would like to support. So I think I would like to thank so much for Ernest. You have done a great job for chair today, and also the 3 speakers and all the conversation, the questions from the floor. These are really, really valuable for us. And I really wanted to encourage everybody to follow us. I put some links about our website, also to be the member of the commission, and follow us on LinkedIn. And then we have a few more online workshops a year, and it will come in March, April, and May. So hopefully we will announce when the details are finalized. So thank you so much today, everybody, and we will make this video available. So if some colleagues who are really interested but could not make it, and please let them know, we will make it available online, our website. Thank you so much, everybody. See you next time. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.